Alright, so now we know how to get layers into our map, we're going to look at changing the symbology. In this video, I'm going to specifically look at changing the symbology for vector data, so point line and polygon. Alright, so I'm going to start off with points, and then we'll work our way up to the more complicated geometries. Alright, so here I have some point features. These represent schools. They came in with just like a default point symbol, but again, that can be changed. So to change symbology, there's a couple options. You can click on the layer, go to properties. You can also pull up the pane over here with this option, so layer styling option. We're not going to use that. We're just going to go into the properties and then change it there. Okay, so we have our default marker here. It's got one component. These are, I believe, SVG type files, so they're like basically vector graphics. So they look pretty good if you rescale them. And also you can change the properties. So we could change, for example, the opacity. So just pull this down a little bit. So you hollow them out a bit there. Change the color, the size. You can rotate it. This is a circle, so rotating's really not going to do anything. Should be able to like offset it relative to its default position. Note there's also some default symbols here. So like grab this. That uses that default symbol, and you could go in here and change it. Again, it's vector graphic. I'm just going to start off with a blue dot, and we're going to play around with changing it. So I'm going to go to the marker, and you can see a couple options here. We have a size, a fill color, a stroke, line pattern, the stroke width, how edges are built, rounded or beveled. Whether or not we want to rotate the feature or offset it from its default position. Okay, so first off, to change the size, it's set to millimeters here initially. We could also, I'm just going to change it to point, and let's just scale it up. We'll make it 12. Now, I guess since I changed it to point, it'll change it much. So let's scale it up to, I don't know, we'll do 24. So we get a lot bigger points there. Probably too big, so we'll scale that back down. So that's changing the scale. Again, to change the fill color, if you click on this drop down here, it'll pull up some options for changing colors. There's different interfaces. So here's some colors that I've used with their hex codes labeled, picking colors off the page. And again, I'm just going to use this default setting. So here we have the color. We can get its hue, saturation, value, measures. So it's RGBs and 8-bit, set an opacity, and then use like a hex code. So for example, I'm just going to make it a gray color. So I'm just going to change the hex code to, we'll do 999999. So it's a gray color. And that changes it. We do apply, we can see it changes it to gray. Here we're going to play with the stroke color. So I'm just going to pick one from the list here. So we'll do, we'll do this red color. And then you make it a little bit bigger. So I'm going to change it to point, and we'll give it like a 1. Bump it up slightly, maybe make it a 2 so we can see it. So now we've got these points that have a gray fill and a red stroke or outline. Alright, you can also use some, again, some built-in symbols. I'm just going to use airports. I know these aren't airports, but this is just for the sake of demonstration. So I typed in airport here into the search, and I get this topo airport. So I'm going to start with that. I'm going to apply it. And you can see this is an SVG or vector graphic. And there's two components. This component is for the fill, and this component is for the outline. So note here where for the fill, it's black with a white stroke, but the stroke is set to no stroke, so it's really not showing it. And then this, we have the stroke color set, and it's set to a width, so it's actually being shown. So again, we could edit these separately. So the fill color, I'm just going to pick one from this list. of colors I've already used. Let's use this like green color. And then to change the stroke, we'll switch over to the other one and just set it to point. And let's make it 1.5. And then we'll change the stroke color here to something else. Maybe I'll do like a red. Okay, so now we have a fill with the green and then the red outline. Okay, so let's go back into that. So look at some other options. So I'm going to bump the size up. Again, we'll change it to a point and we'll bump it up to 24. So that makes it a little bit bigger there. This rotate, you can rotate it relative to its default. So for example, if we put in 45 here, it's going to rotate the airplanes there to that 45-degree angle. Okay, so that's some simple changing some symbology for points. Okay, so I'm going to close out of that, and let's turn those off for now. Then we're going to turn on the roads. We're going to do a zoom to, so let's have roads for like this kind of western portion of South Dakota. Okay, so go into the road properties. Again, there's some defaults here we could pick from. So like there's a default for railroads, or there's like a red dash pattern, black dash pattern. We could search and see if there's anything for roads. So we have topo, these two topo configurations. So if we could grab this, that's what it looks like by default. And again, we could do some manipulation. So again, we have the basically the fill and then the stroke. So for example, we go into the stroke and just and turn it off. So this no pen would turn it off. So now we just have the fill collar, and we could go to the fill collar and we could change it. I'm just gonna grab this like yellow color here. So there we have some thick yellow lines. Just real quick, you can actually pick a color from the map. Let's see if it'll let us do that. So I'm going to go to pick color, and I'm just going to use this like gray color here. And that changes it to that color. Not a good choice. I just wanted to show you that you could just pick colors from the map. I'll do this one. I've used this before. I think it works pretty well. All right, so here we have a layer. This is just more a wider extent of counties. All right, I'm gonna turn this off. So we'll go into the properties here for this layer. And again, we should be able to change it. Yeah, this one's working faster, so we'll stick with this. Here's some like hash pattern, dot pattern. All right, so just to finish this off, let's just give this, go back to this gray one, and then we could go in here and change it. So there's different fill patterns to pick from. Obviously, fill collar. I'm just gonna let's see here. We'll pick from this list. So I'm gonna change it to this like green color. And that's for the fill. And then if we wanted to change the stroke color, we could do that too. So I'm going to give it like a black stroke and then change it to point. And then we'll bump this up to a 1.5 point. Again, if I didn't want to show the stroke or the outline, then I could change this to no pen. That would get rid of the outline. Turn it back to solid. If I wanted to not have a fill color, so I could go in here and then change the fill pattern to no brush, and that would give you just the outlines. Okay, so that's just some simple examples of symbology specific to vector data.